Good morning, everybody. Oh, it's good to see you. It's really good to see you this morning. We're going to do something a little bit different this morning, and and we want to all sort of be on the same page about giving ourselves an opportunity to tune into the dimension of ourselves that is part of the world, and the world is part of us. There's some saying, and maybe some of you will know it, about many know that a drop is in the ocean, but few people know that the ocean is in the drop. Anybody know where that's from? It's Chinese, I believe. The world is in us and we're in the world. And we want to tune into the part of ourselves, the dimension of ourselves that's part of the world, and our relationship with the world, and our concerns for the world. And in some ways, we don't get to really talk from that part of ourselves, because often political conversations are just hurling positions and facts at each other, and we don't really get to speak from what Jean would say, speak from here, about what we're really concerned about, and we also want to talk about what we're hopeful about. So this is a part 2 of the other conversation that we had about the social political dimension of ourselves. And we are doing this as a planning committee. And so we're all going to say just a few words, and we'd invite you to just settle back and listen to what each of us has to say, which will be very brief. And then we'll have a little attunement, and then we'll all speak. Katerina, you are first.
Yes, we have a quote from Jean. People usually tell us their value conclusions, their choices, preferences, and goals. But they tell us little of the experiential process they engaged in to arrive at these conclusions. In this paper, I will attempt to formulate some of the characteristics of an experiential process whose outcomes we usually respect, as compared with a process of valuing we generally do not respect. I will try to show that the problems of values can be seen quite differently and more usefully if we consider not only value conclusions, but also the characteristics of the process. And that's from Gendlin, 1967. The reference is in the chat.
Dorothy.
What I want to talk just briefly about is the whole idea of language, and how important it is, particularly in these times, to think about how we're using our words. And as focusers, sometimes we can get lost in focusing language. And like an example of understanding words or making assumptions is, I think it was last week when somebody used the word weird to describe a feeling she had. And then it was interpreted as, oh, maybe new and fresh. And but that was not what the person was feeling. And so with language, it's just so tied to one's emotionality. it's not, of course, it's not just in the intellect, but sometimes surprisingly, we forget that. And so it's just a thinking about paying attention to not only the attitude of the focuser with the curiosity, but also what is the attitude of the person you're speaking to, and paying attention to that. And it's interesting. Yesterday, I wish I'd heard the whole thing, and I'm going to try to find the reference, but I just tuned into a little bit of NPR when they were talking about, it was a college professor with a group of students, and they were talking about October 7th, and how one student hated the word dialogue and preferred the word conversation. So what I want to know is, what was going on in that person's mind. But it's these little subtleties that can become so important when we're listening to others, and being really careful not to make assumptions what somebody's meaning is, but to stop. And that's where the pause becomes so important.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dorothy. And Liz?
I guess I'm next. Dorothy, thank you so much. That was really great. It makes me want to know more about the difference between a dialogue and a conversation. I wanted to say something about values and culture, which we're all in, we know about that, and it seems obvious, but even to choose this date to talk about this is interesting, because there are so many dates that mean so much to so many groups of people. But even as we're concerned about certain things, we're ignoring other things. And so there's a figure ground situation that we're not even aware of, that certain events become prominent to us, and we're not even maybe thinking about or even knowing about other events, hundreds of events that don't really register with a group of largely, Western middle-class educated centric individuals. So I was struck, and I read the Gendlin article on values that's quoted, and it's a great article, and about the process of developing values. And I think culture was not necessarily directly mentioned. I can't remember, but sometimes the focus in focusing and in psychotherapy seems to be on the individual. And even though a lot is written about culture, it's kind of in the background about how much we're influenced by our culture, by our society, and how it's a departure to step out of that and really try to pay attention to a broader context. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Hello.
Pauline?
Hi. Yeah. Good morning. I'm just actually really just taking a moment or creating a pause to see who I am talking to. Because I suppose it's a communication. So it's like it's me, and whatever I'm going to say, I know some and I don't know others. And I've seen Ivo and Marianne and Anna. Love Anna's crown in the picture. So I suppose that's the beginning of me creating a pause in me to say, well, rather than me just talking from an identity that I don't even recognize as me, it's like, well, what do I want to say, and who do I want to say it to? Hi, Ivo. Now I have a picture. Hello. And that feels warm and it feels more alive. I've come alive. In preparation for this, I think it is part two of a social political discussion and dimension of ourselves. And in preparing for it, I got very nervous and I was wondering, well, why is that? And it is me discovering that when I come from a non-communicating, when there's no relationship between me and the other, then I sort of go into some sort of persona that I'm afraid of getting it wrong. And so I suppose that's my beginning. It's relating. And it doesn't really I don't have to be as concerned as I used to. I don't have to be as terrified as I used to, and that's my kind of my ongoing, unfolding realization of my own sense of belonging, that I belong because I'm here. I think Gendlin said that, and Weiser Cornell in the class. Okay. So it is October the 7th, and it's just one of those days now, like September 11th. And because I'm not of those cultures, American or that part of the world, that is very troubled and very in conflict and in war. I did challenge myself to read a report from a reporter in the New York Times, and he gave graphic detail of, and it's kind of a trigger warning. To me, it wasn't political; it was hatred. And the trigger warning was of someone cutting off a woman's breast and using it as a football. I don't care what nationality that woman was. It was that I witnessed that happening to, didn't matter whether it was a man or a woman. So that's what I'm interested in witnessing, not, I don't want to witness it, but being part of the solution, being part of the peace movement, because it only is in hatred that we can hurt each other. So that's completely different than what I had expected to say. I really, in this preparation, came across Brené Brown's Braving, and I just loved her vision of languaging what I want to be. So thank you for the attention.
So I think I'm supposed to be next. Am I right?
You're right.
Because sometimes I'm right about things, but other times I'm wrong about things. It's very hard to know what side one is on. I think the word dialogue differs from conversation. I'm just making this up. I didn't ask the person who's right. So this is the wrong answer. I think that a dialogue from dia has to do with two people, while a conversation doesn't specify. So maybe a dialogue says it's just two sides to the issue. There's the good guys and the bad guys, depending on which side you're on. And a conversation is we're all in it, which is scary to me because I don't want to be in it with all those people. It's like being on the subway at rush hour. What happened in part one, that I'll use the triggered word, that triggered me, is I felt that everybody was so sure of what they were saying. And that always scares me to be around people who are sure of what they're saying. So I hope I don't sound too sure of myself. So maybe I should stop before I say something that's too sure. Okay.
Yes, that's uncertainty. And Vivian, who is on our committee, is just rejoining us after a surgery. Vivian, do you have something to say, even to say hello to everybody here?
I will just follow Jim's sharing about taking sides. I think that's probably one of the issues why people become egocentric and they forget to see the other side. And I remember somewhere in Jean's or in Lynn's article, I don't remember, somewhere I remember it says that, when you are on this side, you cannot see the other side. The only way to see both sides is to make yourself, away from either side, and then you can hold both. And I think that's the kind of love, kind of big love, not small love we need for this world.
Oh, thank you very much, Vivian. The kind of love we need for this world. Maybe there are moments that we hate this world also. And there are moments that we love ourselves, and there are moments that we hate ourselves. And there are all kinds of feelings. We want to dip into this dimension of ourselves that is the world, that has the world, that the world has us, that makes us and we make it. And just see here what our concerns are, what comes to us about the world. And maybe what gives us hope. Those are two very different felt senses, so we may have to take them separately to allow the concerns. Jean says that what makes a good group is to be able to ask, can you say more about that? So let's do that in this moment with ourselves. And when the concern comes, to say, what is it about that? And maybe even just jot it down. And Jim brought this article about the process of values. What is the process right now of what your top concerns are? And then let's give ourselves a minute to allow in the hopes. Where do we find hopes for our world? Sometimes we don't even focus on that. What direction? Where would looking at the stars and saying, what might be the direction of hope? Something we can nourish. Let's come back to our group, to each other, to this world that we are now. Each of us is a world, and then we together are a world, and then we're a bigger world. And let's each just really listen to each other first before we have conversation, a back and forth, and just see what we have here. What are our concerns? What are our hopes? And my inner Jim, who is also outer, says we don't have to be certain, know something. We don't have to, we're expressing this in us that is concerned for the world and wants to nurture the world. Maybe I'll start with I think it's a very little concern, although maybe it's a big concern. When we were planning what we would have for today, and then we realized it was October 7th, and we wanted to have something that would really commemorate the terrible suffering of the Israelis a year ago, and yet we didn't want to sort of come off saying, well, we care about these people who have suffered and are suffering, and we don't care about the Palestinians or all of the people in the world who are suffering. And so that was a kind of backdrop, and we said, well, we want to use this date to really be with and witness and be together with each other in thinking and feeling about all of the struggles and suffering and find hope there also in the world. So saying that makes me feel better. I guess I just want to add a sentence that it is a big concern, not just a little concern, because how do we open ourselves to all of it, all this complexity, all of the chaos, to find ways of holding all of it together? And I can only do that really in community. I have trouble doing that by myself, just like focusing I can do in community.
Can I say something? Community sounds so nice, but going back to culture, of which I spoke earlier, it can so quickly get into herd mentality and assumptions of shared values and fear of expressing values that go against that mass, the thing that happens when it's a group.
So your concern is a concern that we don't become like monkeys. Jean says that in a group, people all become like monkeys, where they're doing the culture of the group. And your concern for us and for the world is that we have freedom to have our own values, even if they're different than our culture in the moment.
Well, I remember when my son was in school, elementary school and middle school, and they were constantly saying to the kids, don't bow down to peer pressure, which was ludicrous.
So at least at the beginning, let's reflect each person and then see what the next person has to say.
I'm going to reflect that Liz said, don't bow down to peer pressure. And of course, being said by an authority who was pressuring people not to bow down to it. I always feel that I'm always bowing down to peer pressure by opposing it. And I'm so afraid of joining in to be part of things that when somebody expresses something, I immediately say, well, I'm going to take the opposite side. And I was the one this morning who came up with the idea that I hate the world rather than being part of the world. And that was an example of that. But Lynn asked what gives me hope. And what gives me hope, surprisingly, at least maybe it's not so surprising, is that people have lots of intentions, but I don't think that the intentions are what's going to make anything better. I think the fact that people are unable to control except very little is what's going to make the world better. That the world has a wish to continue that's going to oppose people's efforts to destroy it.
Hmm. I want to just say that last part back, that the world has its own wish to continue the carrying forward energy and will oppose all those that seek to destroy it, or maybe don't seek to destroy it, but act to destroy it.
Something that comes to my mind is where I find hope is organizations like Doctors Without Borders. Yeah.
Mm. Mm-hmm. You find hope in these ways that humans can organize and sort of transcend these borders.
This is going to sound simple and basic, but I find hope in people who care about other people. And I'll give an example, like Dorothy, when you shared, I was so touched by what you shared about, it was really about not getting in other people's heads and making up what they're feeling. And that was a form of caring, that it wasn't gotten right about how someone felt. And it can be that simple, or it can be about what was said about Doctors Without Borders, going off and doing something. So I find hope in people who care. Thank you.
Thanks. I just wanted to say, too, because I was thinking that connection and feeling understood. I think when I feel connected to others and I feel understood and I feel that they understand me, that brings me hope. And sometimes, I can do things like making phone calls for a politician that I believe in, and that helps me too. But I think both, like you're saying, both are important. A global, a sociological, and internal, both. And I'm going to just say this quote that my mother had in her house from Camus. It said, "In the midst of winter, I finally learned in me there was an invincible summer."
Would you say that one more time?
Sure. In the midst of winter, I finally learned that there was in me an invincible summer.
An invincible summer. Wow.
That's from Camus.
Yes, I love Camus.
It would help me to stay connected with the group as a whole, to be in part of this group. If I say something now, I feel like I felt like I wanted to say something earlier, and then I've been hearing from other people such moving, sharing such moving experiences that I've kind of lost what I wanted to share before, and now I'm ready to say that being here is bringing me hope, because it is my first time, and in a sense, it's coming here is helping to not to be isolated for me. It's a way of, reaching out to this group. And I feel nervous, though. I feel nervous saying that because I'm not used to, it doesn't quite yet feel real that all of you people are part of this group that I'm with. But because I haven't been in these Zoom groups in a while, but as I say this, I feel like I am looking at you and getting a sense of being a part of your group, which is a way to start being in a connection to people sharing about something important to me. And one last thing I want to say about what was important was that I feel like in talking about the killing, the attacking, the fighting going on, for the first time in quite a while, I felt so much of pain about that. But I couldn't do it. I don't think, except now, feeling so much pain and sorrow. And what better place to be able to feel that deep sadness and sadness for people beings who are suffering than with people who are also asking what gives us hope for that. And many of the things you've been saying, I relate to possibilities for hope as possibilities for hope too. So beginning, I guess, is from being able to admit this pain and sorrow before I can wonder what could be an option for or a solution for that pain. So, yeah. So thank you for giving me this space and time to share with you.
Welcome. We're so happy you're here. And
thank you, Lynn.
To be able to feel the pain is hopeful in a way that we could feel it, or some of us can feel it, or some of us can feel it in some moments and be together.
It really is very painful. It really is very sad for me. And that's what's the more real than is admitting and noticing that pain. Yeah.
Hi, Marsha. Welcome. I'm just reminded of the love that's born out of pain is called compassion. So it's kind of like, well, I like knowing that. I like remembering that.
So now that Marsha paved the way for the newcomers, I just come here for the first time too.
Welcome,
Marsha. And it's very interesting. I'm thinking about the notion of connection, community, and time. I think I always knew this space was here for me. I have it on my calendar even. But I'm from Portugal in Europe, and this time I thought like, I don't have. It's like lunchtime, and it's a transition moment. It's very active, and it's like I don't have time for this. And it's interesting because even yesterday I was with Lynn in a beautiful workshop with Charlotte, and it's interesting. The connection was very strong, and we did even a role play at the end, and I'm wondering, that was the connection that brought me here, and if that is so, the time problem just disappeared. And that's very interesting to to reflect upon, because one of the sentences in our world that nowadays we hear more is "I don't have time for," "I don't have time," "I don't have time," and it's quite interesting how it's not exactly about time as objective. So it feels like it's a bit off topic, but so I'm just connecting the dots. Even before I came here, I was something also quote. I was reading something about Rilke, and there's this famous letters to a young poet. And at some point he says, it is also good to love, because love is difficult. For one human being to love another human being, that is perhaps the most difficult task that has been entrusted to us, the ultimate task, the final test and proof, the work for which all other work is merely a preparation. It's like,
Oh,
like, and we don't have that for granted at all. It does feel that's a huge thing, and I truly believe there must be a way to pause time. And that gives me hope, because focusing does that. There's a constant invitation to pause time. Time is nothing, it's not objective at all. And that gives for me the possibility for this ultimate goal of love. And so that's my hope. There's hope in that.
thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you, Lynn.
Time for this great challenge of love.
Well, I'd also like to welcome the newcomers, Marcia, and is it Ivo? Is that how you pronounce your name?
It's Evo.
Evo, okay.
Thank you.
I'll welcome you both and anyone else here who's new. I joined the group earlier this year, and it's been very nourishing for me. I've become not an early riser, and this is probably not early for people like Katerina and other places. It's 8:15 where I am, but this group is nourishing for me, and I kind of want to comment on what you said about time, and all of a sudden time became a non-issue. What gives me hope is a lot of things give me hope, but the communities like this, the focusing world and the nonviolent communication world and other like processes or methods, if you will. I naively thought at one time that once Marshall Rosenberg and Jean Gendlin passed away, that this work might die away, and I'm glad I was severely wrong about that. I just see it growing, and same with the nonviolent communication. So those are the things that give me hope, is that these groups that are nourishing, and that people show up and they are able to be authentic, and then that's just for that to keep growing, and that mindfulness, the awareness, I think, is also a key element. And like you talked about, this is a busy time of day, and it's and then all of a sudden, so for me, like if I'm wrapped up in the external, not grounded in myself, then I'm more likely to have those thoughts like I don't have time for this, and then I realize I can't not do those things that are nourishing to me. I have to make time, because otherwise I'm just wearing myself down, and I refuse to do that these days as much as I can. It's about nourishing, and when we're resourced, when we're well nourished and we're resourced, we're more likely to be aware and able to listen to differences in a way with compassion. Then for me anyway, when I'm not, I'm less tolerant when I'm tired or when I'm, aggravated by something. So anyway, I'm just, these communities like this give me hope, and the growing of these communities. So thank you all.
Thank you for welcoming people, and I love it when we all share, the welcoming and the reflecting and the holding this space. Let's just take a minute. It's 9:00. So, sort of like our time is speaking of time, is half over. How are we doing? Let's just take a minute to see, what do I want to say or feel or be in this second half of our space together? What has been said that has touched us, and what hasn't been said that is yours to say? We won't have breakout rooms today. We're going to stay together. And I've been sort of saying something, a tiny reflection after each person for the first half, but I'm not going to do that in the second half. And we'll leave it to all of us to welcome each person.
Something stayed with me that somebody said, and I'm trying to remember if it was Lenore. I can't remember. Somebody said about being understood, right? And what I thought of was what I really like, even more than being understood, when I think I understand, is when somebody understands me when I haven't understood myself. That's really intoxicating. So I'll say a little something about, in a focusing session or something, we're in a therapy session or with a friend, and I think I know, but then they say, oh, you mean, and I hadn't thought of that. And so they're knowing me better than I know myself at that moment. And it's such a connection. And then on a more negative note, the second thing I wanted to say was, when you asked, Lynn, where we are, for me, I was feeling a little bit of a pull that we were supposed to find hope. And so we had some bursts of hope from the crowd. But for me, it was a little bit, it took the energy away, because I thought, oh, I have to be hopeful. What, am I allowed to be hopeless? And I don't know if that was true for anybody else, but there was something there that was, you now have to find hope.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was not really part of the group anymore.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know if I could do that hard math problem that the teacher was giving us.
I know what you mean. When I had thought about it, I thought, well, if we just say our concerns, we might all sink, under the weight. And so maybe we need also to think of the hope. But I know what you mean, that those are very different felt senses. and we could share our concerns with each other. And this, I think what we've established in the first half is that it's hopeful just to share our concerns. And the feeling of being understood is so powerful that's hopeful, but that we don't have to pull ourselves out of the grief that we feel for the world at times, or that some of us feel for the. My inner Jim is saying, "Don't talk for the group." That some of us feel for the world at times. Yeah, thank you.
I always feel a little when I'm a little different. I always feel nervous about being a little different. And that is also something that always stopped me or holding me back from speaking up or, saying something that really come to me. I just want to share the images that I have in the first half of the time that we have. This in the first half of the hour. I started with when Liz share about when Liz share your reflection, and you mentioned about the concern that we may have, it could be very limited to every one of us. You may have only limited vision of what we actually know from the whole picture. So the first image that comes to me is being a fish in the water. It's like being a fish, a little fish in the ocean. So I may not know what is the taste of that ocean or the water to me.
Mm.
And that could be my ignorance or being not knowing the color of my own skin and being not knowing the taste of the water.
Mm. Mm.
Okay, that's the first formation of values that I think I have. Being one with the world.
Mm.
You are actually being one with the world. And until the second image come to me, being the herbs in a bowl of curry. Back to the curry story. We are all the different herbs. So I think if I am one part of the curry, I want to be the most original, be the self, be that, bringing up the sense or the fragrance of myself to that bowl of curry. If I'm the paprika, I want to taste like paprika. If I'm whatever is that masala, so I want to taste exactly like that. So I think that is my contribution to the world. Mm-hmm. Being what I am, saying what I think, and that's it. So, and that is the only thing that we can do. Being who we are, exactly as who we are, whether I agree with this or I agree with that, is fine, as long as we are honest with what we think we are. So that's the second image that comes to me. I think to see to be hopeful in the world is having every one of us being exactly who we are. The exact color of the persons that we are. Then the third image that comes to me is the group of sardines, fish, as one. Sardines is the very small fish. They always swim in one direction, and that's the power of them breaking through the nets of the fishermen, or of all the threats. So if we are not pulling away by threats, we are safe. So if we have more and more sardines like us, pulling the world to the direction that we wish the world to be, then we have done our job. It could be a never-ending job. It could be a failure. But it's better for us to fail this way than to be success in all the conflicts.
I was thinking, even like, this little world of Zoom is, and this group is made up of people with their names and their images and what they say. And I was thinking, if I close my eye, could I imagine who is speaking without even listen, if I could recognize their voice or their ideas, or to see if people have shifted from the beginning to this time, because I've been coming here for a long time, to see if there's a change in people, so that if I don't know their faces, just from their voice, I can tell what they're going to say. And I think that even though we are in this group, we continue to maintain certain stance, and we always come to the group with that stance, I think. It is in my mind. I don't know if it's true or not, but I feel like how much change has occurred in us as a result of this, or do we still have that effect of the group to shift in some manner? Some people hold that desire not to change at all. They hold that with great deal of resistance, great deal of power. Am I making sense in saying, because I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just like thinking, what is, we explore new ideas and new images and new way of thinking, and share, and then go in a group and share again. This is our social hygiene, or some connection, or learn to focus or something like that. Do we change? Do we really shift? Do we notice change in ourselves? I'm curious about that, what other people think. We all want to come here because this is a great place, because you can just be whatever you want to be or say. But do we change?
You're wanting us to change, to grow, to be open to new ways and new stances. And I'm wondering, Sashi, if you feel like you've changed.
I think there are subtle changes, or new seeds that are planted, and I have to think about that. But I was thinking at the same time, closing my eyes, and from the voice to say what that voice is going to say, I'm kind of anticipating that they're going to say that, or this is what's going to be their stance, which is wrong of me. But I don't know that. I see, people don't change that much. They have that stance in life, and they hold on to it. It's like it retracts again. You push it a little bit, then it comes back to this. And change a little bit, it comes back to this. So I don't know how other people feel. Like do they change? They feel they changed a lot since they've been coming, or they think their minds have opened up. And
Could I give a response, Shashi? I really appreciate you bringing this up. Well, first, my response is that I don't know that change is necessarily a value, since we were talking about values for everyone at all times. And then my main thought was that maybe partly what you're seeing is a kind of regressive nature of groups. And I believe that Gendlin wrote things that were not so favorable about groups. And I think that I'll speak from my own feeling about being rigid in a group is I think that for some of us, for me, I don't think I would want to change in this context. I'm trying very hard to hold on to myself in a group, especially a big group like this. So change is the last thing I'm looking for.
Let's just take that in for a second. I was thinking that it's the same when we say, is the world changing? We see changes and we see the same struggles emerging over and over again. But having lived as long as I have and having been part of different liberation movements in the 70s, and feels like things have changed, and they're the same. And I think I've changed in this group, and that this group has changed and developed. I was appreciating that because we don't have to take turns, or people don't have to necessarily be recognized, and we're able to really welcome each person. But in our concerns for the world, do we want the world to change? Has the world changed?
What's coming to me about this is this is very deep, actually. Gendlin reminds us that it's a very deep philosophical issue. What is the same? What is different? What is change? What is sameness and difference? And sometimes when I talk about wanting to be the same, I feel a change. Like, for example, when I listen to Liz talking about, I don't want to feel the hope, I want to feel the hopelessness. And that very statement, I feel it's a change. It's a hope by other name or whatever, but we don't have any name. And again, I felt with Liz at the same thing when she was saying that the last thing I want is change in this group. I want to hope. There's the feeling of, aha, yes. And so there you go, change. Is that sameness or is there change? And there we go again, the words and the actual sense of what is going on. It's interesting to reflect upon that. There is no such thing as a form to things, to change or to what we mean by that word. For example, in spiritual teaching like Buddhism, for example, like this on the law of impermanence. Everything is impermanent. Yeah, how can we deny that? Like the calendar, even the official calendar, there will be no more October 7, 2024 again, and so forth. We cannot deny that, like as an external information. And yet, it's not that simple in living, in the felt living. Yeah, sometimes I feel really nourished by feeling the same, and other times I feel really nourished to have this hope of change. Yeah, it's good to put that into words. Thank you.
Sometimes what comes up for me is when I look at children. Yesterday I was in a park. I live in Queens, Flushing Meadow Park. I was by a lake watching children play and watching a very young child, maybe 3 or 4, checking with her mom, going back and forth, laying her little toys apart from her and then getting them and bringing them back. Just that connection between the mother and the little girl and the play and the joy. And then I think of the children in Palestine and Israel and many of these countries and the hatred, and the destruction that they see every day. And, what happens to the hope? So it's just a strong image in my mind. How are these children developing, and how can they be helped to have hope?
I think for me, what's coming up is in a group, and thank you, Liz, is how to coexist with each other in a group and being respectful, or maybe being respectful isn't the right word, but how to coexist in a group without those expectations of going somewhere or changing or doing something. How to be in a group without the expectation of moving in a particular direction. That's what came up for me when I heard Liz. And how to coexist with each other on this planet, which does its thing. It spins. It's doing the same thing.
Then I wonder if you would say something about the changes groups. What was that all about? And it just came up to me, Gendlin and changes. What comes up for you when I ask that?
Are you asking me? I first want to say that I love the idea of not having expectations for myself to change, or the group to change, or the world to change. And that's sort of one side. And then this intention to grow, to evolve on the other side of the coin. And they can somehow go together. Jean's changes groups were about community, but very much not being having people partner like we have breakout rooms and focus with each other. And what I remember most about the changes groups was at the beginning, people would say what they needed, very concretely sometimes, like I need to practice English or I need a car to go somewhere or something or other. And people would also say things they had to offer. And so the community was sort of trying to match up the needs and the offerings. I remember that very closely.
That's a lovely way to be together, to be able to offer concrete things and find out what other people need. And yeah, I think of that, in terms of the church I go to, how to foster more of that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say to Dorothy that I appreciate you sharing too. Is that okay?
Yes, sure.
To bring this back, to bring back what you said about your question about how are children, if in conflict, how are they, if they're experiencing such violence, constant fear and violence, and has it lost the connection with close, loving people? How can they find hope? How will they ever be able to experience hope that we can talk about ourselves about very conducively? We have the support for that, and we have the space and this nurturing connection, this nurturing community to help us find that. But what about with children who don't have any of that connection? And what if they don't ever find it over a period of time, the source for hope? What about that? That really touches me to ponder that and remind myself that there are people out there at making an effort to try to support those children from some directions in the world, and I value what they're doing to doing something to try to make a difference for those children, families, individuals. Yeah. So thank you for reminding me about and I feel that what I feel about it is it's safe in this, I feel good in this community to explore my concerns, I'm not in many other settings, but this is a setting where I really appreciate what I'm able to explore in my feelings and concerns. Mm-hmm. Thank you to you for that statement.
Thank you. Being free to really explore your feelings and concerns. Wow. Whatever they are.
More moved, yes, to explore them here.
And to deeply hear each other. It's very meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to encourage those of you who haven't spoken, only if you want to. There's no pressure to speak, but I'd love to hear from you.
I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. It's a good overwhelm. It's a great overwhelm. And just a deep sense of appreciation. I think, some of what is happening is that I was born in a family of 11 siblings, but conversations were never like this. So very often when I'm in this group, it's like this, I cannot stop feeling the joy really of being in a group where everyone is respected for what they have to offer and for who they are in the moment. And the overwhelm is also an overflow of everything that's being shared, because it's just so yeah, I think it's groups like this that make the world go forward in the direction of a world that I want to be in. So, yeah, from being an herb in the curry to, it's, yeah. I find it is very, I feel very nourished. I feel very, my creative mind is always expanded here. So going back to Sashi's idea of, do we change? I feel that we are constantly changing in very small increments, but this group always produces certain chemical reactions inside of me that I don't know what they are, but they definitely move me forward in a really great way. So, yeah, thank you, everyone. And yeah, deep appreciation, really.
Marga, that really resonates for me, what you're saying. Thank you for saying what you were saying, because when I'm here in group and then I leave, I feel such an openness during the day. I'm better at my work. I feel more attuned. And then over the week, I kind of shut down by things that go on. So, I guess what comes up for me too is that we can have both. We can have the expansion and the openness and the contraction. And sometimes we change without realizing we're changing. And other times we get stuck. And that's part of the human condition, I guess,
Yeah, and something else that's part of the human condition is that we keep talking about the world, but really this world could go on without us very easy. It's us that's the yeah, the contraction. Thank you for that.
Hi, this is Sophie. I think this is a good.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi, it's nice to see everybody. I haven't been here for a while. My father passed away and I was in France. I'm just returning. And I was more in a quiet space than I'm usually perhaps in this group. But I really appreciate the space that we are giving each other to say what's here in this moment. And the space, the pause that is happening. And I remember us, excuse me, at the beginning of our community building, that we were talking about this pause and wanting this pause here. And I feel today it's organically here. And that to me is a change in the direction of peace, this way of listening. And now going right away into a response or being in our own mindset. And it's interesting because now I'm saying this is when you ask Lynn about hope and what is hope for us and how we nourish hope. At the beginning, it is what I wrote, listening, making space, nourishing space for true listening. And for me, it is really slowing down. And a little bit like Gendlin used to say, or at least I think I heard him say it. When he would receive someone in his office, he would clear his desk. There were piles of papers and things he was working on. And he would just clear a little path. And that's what I feel for me is my contribution to peace is clearing a little path in the in the midst of all that's happening in each other's life and in the world. And I agree very much with Margot. We are this world, and it starts here. So thank you very much. I've always felt like this Monday morning is an oasis, little oasis, even though we go up and down with various mountains and rivers. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Yeah, I'm just left with so many different felt senses of the different people talking, and from Sasha asking, have we changed? And just I recognize her voice and really like being familiar with voices, her voice. And Sophie, sorry for your loss of your dad in France. And I feel like I don't really identify as European, but still, Portugal, France is kind of, well, now that's a safe place in the world with focusing in nonviolent communication. And I suppose what I would like to think that I have, and it comes from Mary asking you, Lynn, around the changes group, what would I like? And it's kind of like being peace, being at peace and being kind of channeled for peace. And I really I don't know how I would know that other than I feel a lot more peaceful than when I started coming to this group. So whether that's healing or not, so this world view is getting bigger and bigger in the capacity to heal and wanting to the skill of that more. So just feeling really just warmth and grateful for that. Thank you.
I also want to respond to Dorothy about the suffer and no hopes. I think sometimes in suffering, great suffer, we'll have a stronger hopes. Usually, we'll have a stronger hope when we're really in this greatest, or we are really in the greatest suffer. And if we have that consciousness about the great suffer, we may not want to be pulled and go back to there. And that's the place that we have the sparks or the fuse, the fire, to the motivation to go the other direction. The problems with suffer and sorrow is not so intense to each one of us. That is why we tend to be with that. I think that's also something that I'll try to reflect on. Is it not suffer enough that keeps us in playing ground instead of running away from the fire?
I like that very much. So I was born in a dictatorship and there was no hope. No hope for what I instinctively knew what could be. So I was born with some sense of knowing this is not it, very clearly imprinted in my body. And I didn't do anything for that to happen. But I just knew from very early on, this is not it. So yes, the hope can be as powerful as the...
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Margot.
Maybe that's a wonderful place for us to stop. That embodied sense of this is not it. And then we also have an embodied sense of this is it. This is it. That some people have spoken about in terms of this group and this way of being together. So we're going to have the poem that we read this summer. That was a beautiful poem that I think will go very well with this meeting. So Dorothy, read us Naomi
Shivabnai.
Yes.
Shivabnai. She's a Palestinian American, and has lived in both Palestine and the United States. Gate A4. Wandering around the Albuquerque airport terminal, after learning my flight had been delayed for hours, I heard an announcement. If anyone in the vicinity of Gate 4 understands any Arabic, please come to the gate immediately. Well, one pauses these days. Gate 4 was my own gate. I went there. An older woman in full traditional Palestinian embroidered dress, just like my grandma wore, was crumpled to the floor wailing. Help, said the flight agent. Talk to her. What is her problem? We told her the flight was going to be late, and she did this. I stooped to put my arm around the woman and spoke haltingly. Shu dawa, shu bit uk abiti, stani, shwe, min, fadlik, shubit, siwi. The minute she heard any word she knew, however poorly used, she stopped crying. She thought the flight had been canceled entirely. She needed to be in El Paso for major medical treatment the next day. I said, "No, we're fine. You'll get there, just later. Who is picking you up? Let's call him." We called her son. I spoke with him in English. I told him I would stay with his mother till we got on the plane and ride next to her. She talked to him. Then we called her other sons just for the fun of it. Then we called my dad, and he and she spoke for a while in Arabic and found out, of course, they had 10 shared friends. Then I thought, just for the heck of it, why not call some Palestinian poets I know and let them chat with her? This all took up 2 hours. She was laughing a lot by then, telling of her life, patting my knee, answering questions. She had pulled a sack of homemade mamul cookies, little powdered sugar crumbly mounds stuffed with dates and nuts, from her bag, and was offering them to all the women at the gate. To my amazement, not a single woman declined one. It was like a sacrament. The traveler from Argentina, the mom from California, the lovely woman from Laredo, we were all covered with the same powdered sugar and smiling. There is no better cookie. And then the airline broke out free apple juice from huge coolers, and 2 little girls from our flight ran around serving it, and they were covered with powdered sugar too. I noticed my new best friend, by now we were holding hands, had a potted plant poking out of her bag, some medicinal thing with green furry leaves. Such an old country tradition. Always carry a plant. Always stay rooted to somewhere. And I look around that gate of late and weary ones, and I thought, this is the world I want to live in, the shared world. Not a single person in that gate, once the crying of confusion stopped, seemed apprehensive. They took the cookies. I wanted to hug all those other women too. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost.
Yes. Not everything is lost. See you all next week, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.